All right, let's jump right in. Today we're tackling a really big question. How can any single person's decisions be considered flawless, completely without error? It's a huge question, one that gets right to the heart of absolute authority and faith. And we're going to explore one philosopher's answer, an answer that I think might just change the way you think about truth itself.
So, this is it. This is the exact question a philosopher was asked. I mean, it's so direct, isn't it? It's provocative. And what's so interesting is that instead of giving a simple defense or a critique, the answer they gave completely reframes the whole debate.
You see, this philosopher argues that to really understand this, we shouldn't even start by looking at the leader. Nope. They say we need to start by looking at the followers and ourselves, and how our relationship with authority has just completely changed over time.
So let's go back in time for a minute. Why did societies, for centuries, accept what their leaders said, whether it was kings or priests or popes, pretty much without question? The answer, according to this speaker, isn't because people were ignorant. It was all about necessity.
Think about it. When societies were, as the speaker puts it, weaker, people really depended on big organizations for everything. For structure, for protection, for guidance. So unquestioning faith, well, it wasn't just a virtue. It was literally a survival strategy. You had to follow the leader for the group to make it.
And right here, this is the core shift in the whole argument. The idea is that humanity has kind of grown up. We've moved from a state of dependence, which really required blind acceptance, to a place of societal strength. And with that newfound strength comes a totally new responsibility, the duty to engage critically. This leads us right to the heart of the whole thing. That old way of just blindly accepting things, it's over. For developed, mature societies, and for us as individuals, this philosopher argues that there's now a fundamental duty to question.
This quote is really the turning point here. It's a bold declaration that the rules of the game have changed. The burden of proof has totally shifted. It's no longer on the follower to justify their doubt. It's on the leader, on the authority, to be able to stand up to our questions.
So, how do we actually do this? Well, the philosopher lays out something called a researcher's attitude. It's basically a three-step process. First, you really listen to the message. Then second, you actively question it. Like, is this right? Does this make sense for us today? And third, and this is so important, you record your questions, your inquiry. You create a documented history of your critical thinking.
And to make this really concrete, the philosopher points to their own country, South Korea, as an example. They say, look, while the country contributes a lot to the Vatican, there's no real public record of this kind of deep, critical, intellectual questioning. It's a powerful observation that this researcher's attitude isn't always something we practice, even when we're more than capable of it.
Okay, so this brings us to what I think is the most radical part of the argument. If it's now our job to question authority, what on earth does that do to the whole concept of truth itself? Well, the philosopher's answer is a complete redefinition.
I mean, that's a powerful idea, right? The philosopher is suggesting that truth isn't some old dusty rule handed down from on high. For something to be true in a way that actually matters, it has to be useful, it has to be beneficial, it has to be right for your life, right here, right now.
So the ultimate test of any idea, any doctrine, is its relevance to your actual lived experience. If some supposedly noble truth doesn't actually fit into your life or improve it today, then by this definition, it stops being your truth. It's an incredibly personal and really pragmatic way of looking at it.
Which brings us all the way back to where we started. After this whole journey through the history of authority and a new definition of truth, how do we finally answer that original question about the Pope's infallibility?
And there it is. The philosopher's final answer isn't really about whether the Pope is right or wrong. It's that the question itself is maybe the wrong one to ask. The responsibility for figuring out what's true, well, that doesn't lie with the authority figure. It lies with us. Our job, our duty, is to discern for ourselves.
And that really leaves us with a final thought to chew on. This whole framework, it doesn't just apply to religious figures, right? It applies to political leaders, to scientists, to experts, to influencers, everyone. In a world that is just overflowing with information and so-called authorities, the real challenge isn't just deciding what to believe, but how to believe. So which pronouncements do you accept and which ones do you decide to hold up to the light?